Hello and welcome to this video on using the new Band-in-a-Box for Windows DAW plugin, specifically using it in FL Studio. With Band-in-a-Box 2019 for Windows, we've introduced a plugin version of Band-in-a-Box that accesses all of the real tracks, real drums, and other content in Band-in-a-Box that can be used right inside your favorite DAW without having to open the actual Band-in-a-Box application. The plugin comes free with the purchase of Band-in-a-Box, and the plugin installs when you install the main program. In this video, we're going to have a look at the various ways you can use this amazing plugin in FL Studio. If you use a different DAW, we have other videos that demonstrate it in many other DAWs, such as Reaper, Pro Tools, Cakewalk, Cubase, Studio One, and many more. In this video, we'll first look at a quick and easy way to get started using the plugin. We'll also go through some of the technical aspects, such as the installation, locations of the plugin on your computer, and some settings within the plugin. Then we'll look at different ways you can use the plugin, including adding Band-in-a-Box tracks to an existing project you're working on. And throughout the video, I'm going to try and use a variety of different Band-in-a-Box styles, so you'll get a sense of some of the different genres, grooves, and tempos we cover. Whether you're into jazz, rock, country, R&B, or any styles you can think of, there's something for you in Band-in-a-Box. So what we're listening to right now are some great funk tracks playing in FL Studio that we created with the plugin. Most of what you're hearing right now was created by the Band-in-a-Box plugin simply by typing in these chords, and you can enter any chords in any key. Then we picked this funk style and generated the tracks. We then added a few additional electronic sounds right in FL Studio to round out the project. I'm going to go back in time a little bit to show you just how we got these great sounding tracks. So here we are with a blank FL Studio project. This is the playlist or tracks area. Here is the mixer window. And here is the channel rack. And this is the browser area. And since this is a plugin, we want to click on the plug icon. The first time you're using the Band-in-a-Box plugin, you might want to refresh plugin list first, just to make sure the BB plugin is recognized. But after that, it should be in Installed, Generators, VST3. And you can drag that to the channels rack. So this is the Band-in-a-Box plugin. It's sizable, so I'll make it bigger. And now we have a blank chord chart. This area here is for the different instruments in the style, and is currently blank because we don't have a style loaded yet. Here is where you can pick a style. Here you can set various musical elements such as the key, time signature, etc. And there's a spot for a song title and various menus we'll look at later. What we basically need to do in order to get some tracks is pick a style and enter some chords, not necessarily in that order. So I'll enter a chord progression first. I'll do it in the key of F, and I'll start entering some chords. F7 at bar 1, and I'll leave that for 4 bars. Maybe A flat 7 sus at bar 5, and B flat 7 at bar 7. One thing I want to point out is that you use the left and right arrows to navigate your way through the chord chart. But left and right arrows are also used in the plugin window of FL Studio to toggle through additional plugin settings within FL Studio. So depending on where you clicked last, you might find it toggling through these windows when you're intending to toggle through the chord chart. If that happens, just keep pressing the arrow keys until you're back here, and then make sure you click on the chord chart again, and it should be fine. I'll use a handy shortcut, K8, to copy the last 8 bars. I'll also add a part marker at bar 9 to outline the form of the song, and that means that the drums will play a fill in the bar right before the part marker. At bar 17, I'll add a part marker as well, but I'll click a second time to make it a B part marker, which means the drums and sometimes other instruments will change what they're playing at that part. And I'll enter G minor, then C minor at bar 19, G minor at bar 21 again, and then C7 at bar 23. So I think that's good. I'll change some of the elements up here. I'll make the end bar 24, but I'll actually end on an F chord. And I'll change choruses to 6, so this entire thing will repeat 6 times. So now we can select a style, either by clicking in the Select a Style area, or by going to the Select menu and picking Select a Style. So here is a list of all of the Band-in-a-Box styles available, and you can see there's over 6,000 to choose from. And in this list, you can just double-click on any style in the list to hear a sample of what it will sound like. So for example, if I filtered the list to show jazz styles, I could sample some of them. or some rock styles. Or some country styles. But I think the progression I entered would be very well suited to some funk styles, so I'll filter by that. I'll sample a variety of some funk styles. And I love this lash out style. You'll notice that in this column it shows the ideal tempo of the style, which for this one is 110 beats per minute. That does not mean you have to use it at that tempo, but if it's somewhat close to that, you'll get the best results. So I'll pick that style. So now there's a tap tempo feature in FL Studio that I'll use. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's come up with 117 beats per minute, and I'll set that in the plugin as well. So now we're ready to generate the parts. And there are some custom generation options in this menu, but right now I just want all the tracks generated normally, so I'll press the top Generate button. So it's now creating the tracks. You'll notice that right now there are some green squares and a blue square in this area, and those squares are empty. When the tracks are ready, those squares will be filled in. The generation does take a little bit of time, so we'll skip ahead in the video a little bit. So now it's finished, and these squares are now filled in with waveform icons, meaning they're ready to drag into the DAW. Before we do that, we can sample these tracks by pressing play up here. And we can now drag them into the DAW, either individually, but I'll undo that so I can show you importing them as a group by dragging the blue icon. And now we have these tracks right in our DAW. And during playback, the chord chart also highlights the currently playing bar. In itself, a great tool if you want to record your own tracks now over top of this, or if you just want to play along. Now you'll notice that if I look in the mixer, these tracks aren't here. That's because they're not assigned. Because FL Studio is used so frequently for patterns, and it's often important to be able to mix different elements within a pattern differently, the tracks in the playlist don't necessarily correspond to the inserts in the mixer. But if I right-click on these tracks, I can assign them to the inserts in the mixer. And the inserts you assign them to do not need to match up to the track numbers either. By default, a blank FL Studio project has kick, clap, hat, and snare assigned to inserts 1 through 4, so I'll assign these new Banana Box tracks to inserts 5 and up. And I'll also name them based on the audio file names. You can now mix the tracks, of course, add effects, or anything we like. And as with all real tracks and real drums, these are real instruments played by real musicians. These are not individually sampled notes. These are actual performances by some of the top studio musicians in the world, able to play over any chord progression in any key you enter. This particular style has a bass part by Alex Al, one of the most sought-after bass players in LA, who played in Michael Jackson's band for over 10 years, and has also played with the likes of Stevie Wonder, Sting, and many more. And on guitar is Bob Lanzetti, baritone guitar Mark Lettieri, and drummer Sput Searight, all of whom are a major part of the New York funk and fusion scene. Now we can also start to add to this using some of the great resources within FL Studio. For example, the drums here are fantastic, but let's beef them up with some extra modern electronic kick and clap sounds. I'll click here to create a new pattern, and I'll call it Kick and Clap. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 default tracks in the channel rack: kick, clap, hat, and snare. More can be added, but I'll use those in this pattern. Now I'll enter some notes in the channel rack, which is basically a 16-step sequencer. I'll keep this simple, putting a kick on beat 1 and claps on beats 2 and 4. Now I'll switch from song to pattern beside the play button so I can listen to this pattern. I'd like to try some different sounds for these, so I'll stop that and go to the browser. I'll go to Packs, Drums, Kicks, and I'll click on them to sample them. And I like this minimal kick 40. So I'll drag that onto the kick here. And I'll do the same with claps, going to percussion. And I like this DNC clap 1. And now I can drag that pattern in and duplicate it through the track. And here's how it now sounds with that. And now I'd like to add a simple synth line to this. I'll add a new pattern like before, and I'll call it Synth. I'll add an actual synth to use by going to the plugin database, and I'll pick a classic synth, and I'll try out this Poison oscillating synth. Now I'll select the blank pattern I created and press the piano roll button. And I'll enter an F note for 4 bars, which will be playing over the F7 chord. And then I'll go to an E flat, which will be playing over the A flat 7 sus chord, and then a D, which will be playing over the B flat 7 chord. I'll drag that pattern into a blank track, and I'll give it a listen. So it's kind of neat, but it's a little overpowering. But if I kind of go in and out with the low frequency oscillation, or LFO value, I can bring it in and out and make it a bit more subtle. So if I right click on that particular controller within the plugin, I can create automation clip, which adds this controller to the timeline. I can right click to add points to that, which I can then move up and down. So I can have it swell at every other bar, making it a lot more subtle. And let's check that out. So you can see, using the Band in a Box plugin as a starting point, you can get a great foundation where you can then start adding other great material with the amazing tools in FL Studio. You can also, of course, start with the tools in FL Studio and then use the Band in a Box plugin to add to that. We'll have a look at an example that uses this approach a little later in the video, and we'll also go over the installation and setup of the plugin. But right now I'm going to show you some similar but quicker examples like this, with a few different styles, just so you can get a sense of the scope of what you can do with the Band in a Box plugin. Here I'm typing in some chords like I did before, but this time I'll pick a hard rock style. Setting the tempo and generating the tracks. Now I'm dragging them in. And I got some great hard rock tracks in my project. Here I'm typing in some new chords for a bluegrass song I want to put together. Here I'm picking a bluegrass style, generating the tracks, dragging them in, and now I've got some cool bluegrass tracks in my project. In addition to actually typing in the chords, you can also just open actual Band in a Box files. Either files you've created right in the Band in a Box app, or files other people have sent you, or even the demos that come with Band in a Box. I'm going to open a Band in a Box song file that features a country style that includes a soloist by the amazing Nashville legend Johnny Highland. So we now have the entire thing entered for us, the chord progression, key form, etc. So I'll just generate the tracks. Now I'll drag them in. And here's a great country style with Johnny Highland soloing over the changes. And I'll do the same file open thing to check out the demo for a Samba Brazil style, loading a song that features a style with the legendary Alex Acuna on drums and percussion, as well as the amazing Ramon Staniero on guitar. I'll generate, drag the tracks in, and here it's playing. So now we'll look a little bit at the installation, setup, and actually getting started with the plugin. The plugin works by accessing your Band in a Box folder, and particularly the real tracks, real drums, and other content within the Band in a Box folder. As such, the plugin is installed during the installation of Band in a Box. It can also be installed with patch updates for Band in a Box. In either case, during the Band in a Box installation, you'll reach the part where the plugin is actually installed. For the majority of users, simply going with the defaults within the installation will be exactly what you'll want to do. Nevertheless, I'll go through the steps here and explain what's going on. Here it shows the different plugin types that are being installed. The VST3 plugin is the one we're particularly concerned with in this video. There's also a VST2 plugin that gets installed, and an AAX version of the plugin, which is specific to Pro Tools. If you don't want to bother installing the VST2 plugin, and you don't have Pro Tools installed, and don't think you will in the future, you can just deselect them. However, there's certainly no harm in just leaving them and going with the default, and they don't take up a lot of room, so that's entirely up to you. Also, the plugin is an instrument type plugin. However, some other programs don't allow instrument plugins, so there's an FX option as well. FL Studio does allow instrument plugins, so you don't need to check that. So basically, we've left this as the defaults. Here it shows you exactly where on your computer the plugins will be installed. The Band in a Box folder by default is CBB, but doesn't have to be. But this does need to be the location where you actually installed Band in a Box earlier. If you installed Band in a Box on a different drive, for example E, in the first part of the setup, this would show up as E here as well. So again, there should be no reason why you would change this. And as for the location of the plugins, again, for FL Studio, we're only concerned with the VST3 plugin. VST3 plugins need to go in this location, so again, there should be no need for you to change that. And again, even if you're not using the VST2 or AAX plugins, it shows you here where they're going. This part of the installation is just related to VST2 and different locations where the VST2 plugin will be duplicated. Since we're not concerning ourselves with the VST2 plugin, this part of the installation isn't important. Again, the plugin doesn't take up a lot of space, so it's fine to leave these or remove the checkboxes, whichever you'd prefer. And that's it for the installation. Once that's installed, you should be able to find it by going to the plugin database, Installed, Generators, VST3. And there's the Band in a Box VST3 plugin, which as we saw earlier can be dragged to the channel rack to be used. If you've installed it and for some reason it's not appearing, just right-click on Plugin Database and select Refresh Plugin List. If it still doesn't appear, you can go to Options, Manage Plugins, and here it shows you all of the paths that it looks for when it scans for plugins. The one we particularly noted in the installation was C, Program Files, Common Files, VST3. If that's not present here, you can add it with this button. Then if you rescan, it should certainly find it. Now let's check out some of the settings within the plugin. The host is of course the DAW you're in this case FL Studio. There's no reason to change this, and auto is always the best option. Highlight bars during DAW playback enables what we saw earlier, where the bars were highlighted in the plugin as the music played in the DAW. By default this is on, but there may be some instances where you don't want that on, in which case you can turn it off here. Clear renders will clear all of the audio files that are currently saved in the Band in a Box folder, which is C, BB, BB plugin, save tracks, and then subfolders within that. This is something you need to be very careful about, and you should only use if you're confident about your workflow within FL Studio. By default, if you just save a project in FL Studio and you have audio associated with that project, the project is referencing the original location of the audio. So if you use this feature to delete all of the audio in that plugins folder, you can potentially ruin not only your current project, but other previous projects as well. However, if when you save as a zipped song file, then that does save all the audio in the project along with the project itself. If that's how you always work when dealing with FL Studio projects that contain audio, then you can safely use the clear render feature, but you need to be very confident with your workflow. In general, the audio in that folder doesn't take up a huge amount of space on the hard drive, so if you have the hard drive space, the safest thing is of course to leave it alone. Notify when generation is complete is on by default but can be turned off. This area is taken from the installation where we specified the Band in a Box location, in our case leaving it as the default location. There's likely not a reason this would need to be changed, but if it were pointing to an incorrect folder, it would appear red like this. You could set the correct folders with these select buttons, or likely pressing Find Folders would set it correctly automatically. So earlier on we saw how we could use the plugin to create some funk tracks from scratch, but now I'm going to show you how you can use it to add tracks to something you've already recorded. So I've got a project in FL Studio that I've been working on, a modern take on the old American folk song O Shenandoah. Let's listen to a little bit. So I'd like to add some Band in a Box tracks to that. I like all the tracks I've got so far. I'd like to just maybe add some real instruments to give it a bit more of an organic flavor. So I'll add the Band in a Box plugin to create some tracks to add. First, I'll make sure the tempo matches the project, 87 beats per minute. There is not 2 bars of silence at the beginning, but there is a 2-bar intro, and I don't think I want the Band in a Box instruments to start until the vocals start, so I'll leave lead in. So now I'll just start typing in the chords. C, E minor, F, C. I'll skip ahead in the video until I'm done that. So the whole thing is now typed in, and the chord chart is actually only 13 bars, but repeated 5 times. And now, just like earlier, we can pick a style. And as we saw before, there are over 6,000 styles to choose from, so we'll filter to find what we want. Our song is 87 beats per minute, so I'll filter by a close tempo, 85. And it's even eighths, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... so I'll filter by that. And I know there are some really cool new Americana styles, so I'll just type in Americana in the text filter as well. And I'll try a few of these out just by double-clicking on them. And I really like this one, and it was recorded at 70 beats per minute, so not too far off from 87, so I'll try that one. Now remember, even though all these instruments will get generated, we don't need to use them all, and I might just want a couple of them. So now I can just generate the part. Again, we'll skip ahead a little bit in the video. Here's the dialogue, which means the tracks are ready. And now I'll drag in just the 5-string fiddle and the mandola. I'll assign them to inserts so we can mix them and auto-name them. And let's give that a listen. And I'll solo them so we can hear them in more detail. Sounds great. So now I want to start adding some more tracks to this. For example, this empty space here could use something, maybe a lead instrument of some sort. So in this file, it's just these bars that I want to generate, which is those 4 bars of instrumental break between verses. So if I was actually recording someone doing a lead line over this section, I might get them to do several passes, and then I could pick the best one, or even comp together a part taking elements of the different takes. And with this plugin, we can emulate exactly that with the Multi-riff feature. Now, this is the Real Tracks picker, distinct from the style picker we saw earlier, in that this is for picking individual instruments rather than full band combos, which are the styles. Now, I don't necessarily think a solo would be appropriate in that empty space, but maybe something melodic like a pedal steel part maybe. I'll filter by pedal steel, and I'll also filter by even eighths at a tempo of 70 to 90. And I'll sample a few. I really like this dreamy single note pedal steel. This one's cool as well, but I think too busy for what I want here. So I think the dreamy single note one it is. So it's now the same real track in 7 different slots, which is what the multi-riff does. Now these 4 bars are highlighted, but it's actually going to generate a bar before as well. The reason for this is that there is often a pickup leading into a bar, particularly with soloists, and this ensures that that won't be cut off. So now under Generate, I'll go Custom and generate all riffs in the multi-riff area. And I'll skip ahead in the video again. So those are done now, and like before, I can grab the blue icon and drag that into the DAW. So first I'll assign the inserts to all of these tracks. And I'll open the mixer and mute all but the first. So I'll listen to a few. Yeah, that one's not bad. I'll keep listening. And I think I like this one best. So let's check that out from the beginning. So we've seen full styles being used, we've seen multi-riffs, and there are also other options for individual reel tracks which can be loaded in this middle area as well, including user tracks and reel drums. So you can start to see the possibilities with this amazing plugin. Thanks very much for watching and have fun!